Well, Cavs fans, game one did not go the way the Cavaliers probably planned it, but we got ourselves a series here as the Cavaliers fall 121 to 112 here at Rocket Arena. Spencer Davies here to recap it with you. And we appreciate you hanging out with us here on a Sunday night as game one is in the books between the Cavs and the Pacers. And Spence, I think the the biggest story from this game in terms of how it all played out has to revolve around just the 3-point shooting. When one team shoots over 50%, 52%, almost 53%, and the other team shoots 23%, which, by the way, if anybody watching saw my tweet was correct until a garbage time three from Ty Jerome. I had tweeted with about 30 seconds left in the game that this was the worst 3-point shooting night of the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were shooting 21 point something percent with 30 seconds to go, and then Ty Jerome randomly hit one with 30 seconds left that raised that up to 23%, which meant it was the second worst that they've had all season. So just an uncharacteristic shooting night for Cleveland. And that really did tell the story of the game because even if they shoot like 30% from three, they probably win this game. But because they were so bad from beyond the arc, I don't think anybody finished with more than 2 3-pointers made tonight. Donovan was 1 of 10 from three, which was when you have your star player going 1 of 10 from three and still drop you 33 points, by the way, like that's just not going to cut it for this team. So an anomaly of a game, but obviously it's a tough one because it puts the Cavs behind the 8 ball as they get ready for game two. They're now down in the series 1-0.
Yeah, and you're not going to have a perfect run throughout the postseason. It's really hard to do. And it seems like Donovan's opinion reflected that. He's just like, look, they hit first and we got to respond. And that's always how it goes with this team. If they have to get knocked down, you got to get back up. And that's just how this team works. And what's their identity been the entire season. Now, with this one, I had a lot of observations. And the first one for me was how the Pacers were generating those threes. A lot of doubles, a lot of tilting the floor, a lot of Halliburton going right, Nemhard going right, and then skip passing across to the other side, and then a lot of jumpers were open. The corners were empty a lot of this game too, and I think that has to do a lot with it, but also the offense is what affects the defense. And since they were missing so many shots, the Pacers were allowed to push the pace, and that was huge because the Cavs actually got into the paint at will. They scored 70 points in the paint.
Yeah.
It was open for everybody, which I did not see coming, but they could not make their threes. And when they couldn't make their threes, the lights were out. Like I said, that's what happened. It ended up putting the lights out on the Cavs, and it had the Pacers running up the floor, and they couldn't keep up with them. And initially in the first half, really that first quarter, the way that Indiana closed it, it just kind of was going to set the tone for the rest of this one. But they say they made some adjustments, as Kenny said, got used to the pace, didn't turn the ball over. It was just they were playing kind of squirrely, is the way that I presented it to you earlier.
Yeah, there was some sloppiness, especially in the first quarter. We I think at halftime we talked about they had 5 turnovers. It wasn't a lot, but 4 of those came in the first quarter. And it was just like uncharacteristic, like bad passes, lazy passes, guys missing passes, like it hit their hands, and they dropped it, and some of them they got back, but then they would just lead to like bad shots. But yeah, like the offense, the defending this Indiana team, I think was the other big concern that came out of it, other than the missing the shots, because like you said, there was just so many times where they had your attention on one side, and then it was either Neesmith or Nemhard who were like wide open on the other complete side of the floor, and then the Cavs didn't have room to close out.
Positioning.
Yeah, and so we talked that there was so much said leading up to this game and in this series about defending that 5-out offense, and it was clear that Indiana had an advantage there in the way that they sort of spread the floor and make the Cavaliers sort of move around. They couldn't play a lot of zone tonight because of that, because they were getting sort of they were getting shot out of the zone. So those are the 2 biggest things I think that stand out. But obviously the 3-point shooting being better gives the Cavs a better chance to win this game. And it was weird too, because it wasn't like they had bad looks. Like a lot of the looks were good. They just weren't falling. Even like some of these transition buckets that they were making, like they were taking. Ty Jerome had a couple where he was like in transition trying to take them, and usually you're used to him hitting those.
The pull-ups that are just mid-break that they usually knock down and break spirits with weren't going.
Yeah, it was still part of, like, they were still playing within what they normally do, in the confines of what they normally do from an offensive standpoint. The shots just literally would not fall. On the flip side, everything was falling for Indiana. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it was just mostly, again, the Cavs got into the paint. They scored 70 in the paint. Donovan Mitchell really at the end of that third quarter was putting it into 5th gear, getting to the paint.
Yeah.
Evan Mobley, I thought, had a really good game tonight as far as being a safety valve for Don when he got doubled, looking over the top for the entry passes, and then driving himself also from the perimeter. I thought that they had some good games. Ty Jerome was just a little bit just off tonight. I think that the rhythm wasn't quite there. As Kenny said,
He
they
had
weren't.
21 points, but it wasn't.
It was on 20
It was an
shots.
inefficient 21.
It was on 20 shots,
Yeah.
and Donovan took 30 shots. So there's 50 shots from two guys right there. That's something that we haven't really talked about or touched upon. So I think that they were also trying to put the team on their back because the shots weren't going down. And in turn, that affects you on the defensive end. And the pace is something you're trying to catch up to. Donovan had his hands on his hips after some shots because he was tired as hell. And the other part of this too, man, is this was a physical game. Yeah. DeAndre Hunter getting blocked by Benedict Mathurin on a huge fast break. Jared Allen, after a huge dunk over somebody, lands on his tailbone. There are some injury things that we have to pay attention to going into game 2 because it comes up so quickly on Tuesday.
I do want to talk about those here in a second. In terms of the 70 points in the paint, though, I think Donovan was kind of the spark of this too. In that third quarter, he scored 12 of his 33 points in the third quarter, which, by the way, is 33 points. The 8th straight game one where he has scored over 30 points, which some elite company, just saying. He passed Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan has done that 7 times, I think twice, and Don's now done it 8 times. So that's pretty good company, although I'm sure he would have preferred it was in a win. But
he said that.
It felt like in that third quarter especially, it was a lot of like, let's take what they're giving us, right? Like the 3 points weren't falling. They picked up on that. And in that third quarter especially, Don was like, all right, if the 3-pointers aren't going to fall, I'm going to keep attacking you at the rim. I'm going to slash to the basket. I'm going to find cutters who are coming to the basket. And that's what actually allowed the Cavaliers to climb back in this game. They were down 12 points at one point, 80-68 later in that third quarter. And it was Don sort of just taking what Indiana was giving them that allowed them to kind of come back in the game, make it a 2-point game going into the fourth quarter. They actually took the lead at one point. They made it a 2-point game. And then there was, I think, 6 lead changes in that fourth quarter as they kind of went back and forth. And the fourth quarter for a while felt like it was living up to being like an epic game 1 of the playoffs type thing. So yeah, like it was just, they didn't have enough at the end. Some of that was because they were gassed. It would have been nice for a few more outside shots to fall, but they showed that, like, okay, we had to adjust kind of on the fly and attack this differently and just take what they were giving us, and it worked. But as we saw, like it's hard to win a game that way when, especially against the Pacers, who are such a fast-paced team, when they're like running up and down the floor, which was another thing we noticed. Like even after the Cavs makes, they were sprinting out and getting easy looks on the other end because the Cavs are kind of lagging on defense. And it got to a point where like they stopped like full court pressing certain players, like they were doing it with Tyrese Halliburton a little bit, and then they stopped because they were like, we just got to get back and get on defense and worry about the half court. So yeah, like I think the pace of play really was felt tonight by both teams, because I think the Pacers looked a little bit gassed in the fourth quarter too. But certainly that was an element of how this one kind of played out.
Most definitely. You got to hit jump shots too to win games. And that was the key to this. Like Cavs ended up shooting over 50% overall.
Yeah.
But a lot of those, again, were in the paint, layups. Hardly, they went really hard at the rim and earned those a lot of the time. But as you were saying, taking what they were giving them. But here's a part where I also want to say, you got to give credit to Indiana too. Just the way that they defended the Cavs and kind of made them feel a little off kilter.
Yeah.
And those guys are also the ones on the other end who made them get punished. Aaron Nesmith, back-breaking three points in the fourth quarter. Andrew Nembhard making like a 35-footer with like 5 seconds left on the shot clock after a great possession defensively on Tyrese Halliburton. And I think it was a 2-point game that turned to a 5-point game. And then he hits another one down the floor. Like those are the moments that separate you. And to their credit, the Pacers got the job done on that front.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about Don tonight, and we talked about this during the game, there were some moments, and I think this is the first time I feel like the Cavs were kind of pressing at times, especially early in the game. Like they were clearly, they felt that Indiana had kind of blitzed them a little bit, and they were trying to kind of get back into it. And so I felt like they got out of funk with their offense early on in this game. I think they got out of it later, but Don, I think, was at times doing a little bit too much. Like I think there was the ISO ball, which Kenny Atkins actually talked about after. He said like they weren't moving the ball as much; it got stuck too many times. And so I understand like that's that balance that we always talk about with Donovan, right? Where he has to sort of balance like when do I take over and when do I sort of try to play within the flow of the offense. And it felt like every time the Cavs got close, then he'd like come down the floor and just try to hit like a pull-up 3 in transition with a guy standing there. And I get it, it's Don, like he can hit that shot. But in that moment, it didn't feel necessarily like the right play. So again, I'm not trying to knock on Don because we know how important he is to this team. but it just felt like tonight they weren't playing at every. And again, it was mostly early, I think, more so than late. But in that first quarter, especially, they just came out and they looked like you said the word squirrely. Like they just weren't really in rhythm with how they generally play. And I think Don was kind of part of that early on.
And maybe to that point too, it's seeing a different kind of defense too, in addition to the paint. You saw a lot of zone with Miami. You see switches with Miami. Indiana doesn't switch. Indiana stays home on their man, and they don't do much of that. They drop Miles Turner, and they just kind of let they pack the paint, and then they try to, have you beat them from beyond the arc. And that's really what the Cavs do, and they weren't able to do it tonight. We were joking just how well that the Cavs lineup played the non-Don, non-Evan Mobley lineup when they kind of shifted.
They were down 10 and they made it 5. And they were back in later, and I think they had a couple buckets.
Yeah, exactly. And that was good to see, because that's just the depth shining through for the Cavs as it has all year. I thought Max Strus brought a lot of energy tonight. He just couldn't make shots. He had so many moments where he's just going around like the Tasmanian devil, saving the ball from going outside, trying to put back a non-existent shot on the rim. Like, he's just full of energy, and that's exactly why he gets the playing time he does. I thought Sam Merrill was okay tonight too. He had a couple of threes, did some things to create some mismatches and draw attention off the ball.
Which is why he's in the starting lineup, by the way. Yes. Kenny talked about that afterwards. Like, he just creates so much in terms of mismatches off passes and like allows other guys to get their shots off. So that's why he keeps him in the starting lineup. At least he has while Darius has been out, which we'll get to.
And Max Strus, the same thing. He does a lot of off-ball screening that really creates a lot of openings for the Cavs. And obviously, they just didn't make enough jumpers tonight. Again, they got into the paint. They just did not make the jump shots.
I do want to talk about the injuries here and how concerned we are moving forward. But real quick, I'll just rattle off some stats for you. I already told you Donovan had 33 points. He also had 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Mobley, 20 points and 10 boards. Ty Jerome, 21 points off the bench, but an inefficient 21, as we said, 8 assists. Jared Allen had 12 and 7. And DeAndre Hunter had 11 off the bench as well. On the Indiana side, Aaron Nesmith, who we talked about, 4-6 from 3. He had 17 points. Andrew Nemhard had 5 of 6 from 3. He was the leader there for them. Had 23 points.
Timely, efficient.
I think he actually led the team in scoring too, because Halliburton had 22 and Siakam had 17.
Their balance was fantastic.
At one point, I looked at you and I said, the Pacers box score right now looks like the Cavs box score usually does.
And then how did I respond? I said they did exactly what I said the Cavs should do to Halliburton, make him a scorer. They baited Donovan into doing that today. They baited Ty Jerome into doing that today.
And that leads back to what I said about sometimes I think Don was trying to do a little bit too much on his own. And that played into the hands of Indiana, like we talked about. It certainly looked like, especially with the shot making. Because here's the thing, like, part of the reason the Cavs haven't had a night like this pretty much all season, shooting from 3, is because they have so many guys that can, like, if Donovan's off, it could be Garland. If Garland's off, it could be Ty. Like, they have this trio of guys that can all sort of, and there's others, but tonight it was like everybody was off, and it was almost like, I wonder if that would have been the case if Darius was out there. Or like, if Darius even makes like 5 threes, 4 threes, like that changes the complexion of the game entirely. And so, as much as I know there's this narrative out there about the Cavs being better with Ty Jerome, I think they missed their all-star point guard tonight. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, DG's important. And, another thing too, and, we're going to go into the boxes of excuses here, but Cavs also being off for those 4 days, it makes a difference. The Pacers did just play, 3-4 days ago, right?
They played on Thursday. I think the last game was Wednesday.
Thursday or Friday, right?
I think the last game was Wednesday, wasn't it?
Oh,
I think. Yeah. So it was close, but
closer than
they had a little less time than the Cavs did.
There you go.
Wait around.
There you go.
And honestly, like, we talked about that going to the first series, like the idea that the Cavs were off for so long, is this what they would look like? Ended up rearing its head in this one more so than that one,
especially with Indiana pushing the pace the way they do.
For sure, like they definitely they threw the first punch, is a good way to put it. Along the lines of injuries, though, Don was clearly favoring his I think it was his knee, but also you mentioned it might have been his hip. Yeah. Somebody told me he hit knees with somebody at one point. So he was kind of laboring up and down the floor. We know DeAndre had that hard spill where he had his wrist.
Yeah, he had the wrist
left and then came back and was in the game towards the end there. But how concerned, I was in the locker room to hear from DeAndre. I know Donovan didn't seem concerned about any of the injuries. He was like, it's the playoffs, we're all banged up. And Kenny said the same thing. But how concerned are you about any of these ailments, especially with DeAndre, who you actually had a chance to talk to?
So DeAndre seemed like it was a non-factor. So that's a good thing.
That's positive.
With Donovan, obviously, he's going to push through it. He always does that.
Yeah.
Evan, on the other hand, it seemed like he had a pretty significant limp in the locker room, to be honest with you.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know which ankle it was, but just at first glance, just he had a limp after the game. So that one's hasn't come out really too much.
Spence usually has a positive spin on everything. That's why he comes spin.
It was
no positive spin on
it. It was an awkward landing or something when he was trying. I think it was out of the hook shot against Turner, maybe. Yeah. So keep an eye on that because obviously very important Evan Mobley is to this team.
Yes,
and especially if you're going to play 5 out against the Pacers.
For sure. And I thought Evan was really steady tonight. Like, again, the 20 points, the 10 rebounds, like he was kind of doing it on both ends. He hit a couple threes tonight as well. Like he was, I thought he was a steadying presence and somebody that they needed out there in a big game where you were trying to mount a comeback. I thought he was a big part of it. Mm-hmm. What did you think about the officiating tonight?
So I think that they definitely missed a few just on the rim drives. I gotta say, with the DeAndre one, at first glance, I was like, oh my gosh, how could they not call that? I thought Benedict Mathurin got a pretty clean block on that one. Now,
that's fair.
Jarrett Allen, when he goes up for a dunk and falls on his tailbone and there's nothing called, that's pretty outrageous.
But the worst part of that one for me was they called a foul on Evan early in the game. I think it was on Turner, who went up for like an easy dunk.
Barely had his hand
and it was like it was like he had like his arm like here. And it was kind of just like he touched him, and that's a foul. But then Jarrett gets pushed over while he's going up for a dunk. And I guess because he made the dunk, they didn't call it. But it was like, dude, he clearly was fouled. Did you see how hard he fell on the floor? What are we doing?
Soft, right? That's what the people say, right? Soft.
But no,
dude, he landed straight on his tailbone. Yeah, I can't believe that has to be bruised tomorrow. No way.
Kenny made sure, and Kenny's going to be political about it because he has a whole series where he has to sort of, play nice with these guys.
He did say that he thought that the officiating was not the reason that they lost, but he did bring things up.
But he did bring a few things up, but he said in general, he was like, I thought the officiating was fine, was the word that he used. Like, it's sort of to say, like, they did their job, but they could have been better. I think from our standpoint, like, we can probably be a little bit more critical. I thought there were some inconsistencies. And that's always my biggest thing. My biggest thing in the playoffs is like, however this group of officials wants to call the game, if they want to let them play more, fine. If they want to call more fouls and be whistle happy, I'm okay with that too. But just be consistent on both sides. Like, don't call a foul on Evan for barely touching a guy, and then when Jarrett gets thrown to the floor on a dunk just because he made the dunk, be like, he's fine. Just rub some dirt on it. Like, no. So to me, there were some inconsistencies there. And I know the crowd certainly let them hear it as well. With your favorite chant, by the way.
Oh, yeah. The ref you suck chant. Thanks a lot, Golden State, for creating that one. Good Lord.
So I think maybe a good ending place here is to bring up this fun stat here. So, teams down 1-0 in the conference semis have won 56 out of 216 games, or 56 out of 216 series, excuse me. It's 25.9%. Now, what I can tell you is when I looked this up, based on all the rounds of the playoffs, all 4 rounds, 56 is the second most series won after being down 1-0. Now you have to think like there's less of those series than like first round series. The first round series have, I think, 75 or 76 teams have come back from 1-0, which again makes some sense. But 25.9% is the highest percentage in terms of teams that have been able to still win a series after being down 1-0. Any guesses as to you already know?
I already know, so I ask me any guesses.
So what's funny is the Pacers actually were down 1-0 last year to the Knicks. They actually got down 2-0 to the Knicks and came back and still won that series 4-3. And they did it in New York, by the way, in a Game 7. So we have some recent history that shows us it's not that big of a deal. It's going to be okay. But that is a legitimate stat that I know they always like to bring up. Like, how many times does this happen? We know Game 1s are pretty pivotal. So there's your answer. It's 56 times in the second round a team has come back and won a series after falling down 1-0. And like I said, I just think it's kind of ironic that the team the Cavs are playing is a team that was down 1-0 last year, also down 2-0 last year, and ended up winning the series.
And to play devil's advocate, the Pacers know that, and they've been in that position. So they're going to be even more desperate, I think, in Game 2, knowing we have control of this series if we can get a win in Cleveland. Let's put the boots down, get back home, and that's where the Cavs have to be ready. And I think that they were ready in the second half. I thought their adjustment to the pace was a lot better. As you said, they had less of the getting beat down the floor after makes.
Yeah.
They were ready to get back.
And third and early fourth quarter, like, they put the clamps on them defensively. They were causing a lot of mistakes. Yeah. It was turnovers leading to buckets.
The momentum was shifting.
For sure. Yeah. So I think they figured out what they needed to do, and they played with that intensity. Now it's about replicating that going into Game 2. And let's face it, I gave you those stats. it's not the end of the world that they're down 1-0. But if you go down 2-0, even though we have some recent history with the Pacers doing it last year, not ideal, especially when you lose 2 at home. So,
no, and with the injury history, let's not let
yes,
the
well, that's
injury
the other thing.
possibilities.
The injury
Yes.
possibilities, and that's, I think, for me, that's kind of where that's what I think is like there's like a silver lining to tonight, where there's also some scariness to tonight, which is like, all right, they're down 1-0, but what are the chances they're going to shoot that bad from three again? Like they rarely shoot this bad from three. It's bound, like it's the law of averages thing, right? Like they're probably going to bounce back and make more threes. So in that respect, like, okay, they have a very good chance of winning game two. But on the flip side, like, it's the injuries that you start to worry about. Like, how serious is this toe for Darius Garland? Is he going to play in game two? Because they maybe feel a little bit more desperate now. Is Donovan going to be okay? Is DeAndre going to be okay? Is Mobley going to be okay? And if those are now factors in the series,
that's 3 out of your core 4, my guy.
I mean, that's what I mean. Like, if that is now a factor, that changes the math on everything, and then you feel a little less confident. So, silver lining, probably not going to shoot that poorly again, and I think that's reason for optimism. But the downside is, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of tense. There's going to be some tenseness in this building going into a game two, knowing some guys are banged up. Like, if they don't come away with this one, we might be in some big trouble.
Yeah, you're going to have to be really on your P's and Q's coming out. And like I said, in game two, knowing that the Pacers are going to be in flat out attack mode, since they were able to come in here and take game one, because they made literally everything and did a good job of executing and getting the Cavs on one side so that they could skip past it to the other, and give them credit, because defensively they did their jobs too.
I can barely see the comments, but I think I see one that says, "You right, trade Spida."
Oh, geez, here we go.
So maybe it's time to sign off before things get a little too crazy in this comment section. No, but in all seriousness, we'll see what the Cavs bring in game two. They're certainly going to have some adjustments ready. You know, Kenny Atkinson will. We'll see if DG is going to be ready to go. But it's going to be a big one here on Tuesday night, with a chance to even the series up when it goes to Indianapolis. And I'll say this, Ty Jerome, I know he said this to you guys in the locker room. He said it's going to be a fun series. So I think that means they're anticipating like this is going to be a battle between these two for a lengthy amount of games, and we'll see if that starts on Tuesday.
Make sure you watch that stuff from the post-game locker room tonight. Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter spoke in the locker room. And
we got Don and Mobley at the podium.
Yep. Ty was asked about his confidence level in the Cavs, and he chuckled. So that was pretty indicative of how he feels about this team. And DeAndre was very mum tonight, but he was also saying the big focus is being more physical. My favorite word.
Well, that'll make Cavs fans happy. So appreciate you guys stopping by. As Spence said, make sure you head on over to the Cavs on SI YouTube channel, or some of you might be watching this right now, to find those videos, see the post-game commentary, all those great things. But also hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. You can check out our podcast, Courtside with the Cavs on SI, which we are going to drop an episode. I don't know. Are we going to do an episode tomorrow? Do we have any plan? We'll have to talk about it. But also read our written content. I know I got a post-game story up over at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers, as you can get the latest on your Cleveland Cavaliers over there. Any final thoughts?
I think that's
covered it.
Pretty much covered, man.
All right. Game 2 Tuesday. We will see you then, pre and post-game. And then this guy's going to hit the road for game 3 and 4. So appreciate you guys stopping by. We'll talk to you again soon, and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers with the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. I laughed.